artificial intelligence coming to a virus near you. I'm Tanya Hall for ZDNet and Tech Republic, and joining me is Mark Stocklin, Principal RSM and Manager, Cognitive Cybersecurity Intelligence at IBM Research, and Dilun Kirat and Jiang Zhang, both IBM research scientists. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, Tanya. Hi. Thanks for having us.
So tell us briefly about your role, Mark, at the IBM Research.
So I'm a principal research scientist and the manager of the Cognitive Cybersecurity Intelligence Group at IBM Research. And, we're looking at IBM Research for a very long time into how new technologies, evolving technologies are really affecting cybersecurity, with the goal, obviously, to understand how they can create vulnerabilities and also weaknesses in our systems today. And we're doing this very much to understand how we can build better defenses and help clients and organizations to counter these new threats coming up.
So, Mark, you and your team were a part of an IBM group that presented at Black Hat 2018 on the topic of artificial intelligence as a cyber threat. How has malware evolved since the early days of PCs?
So, as with anything and everything in security, malware is an arms race, a cat and mouse game, basically, between the malware authors and the defenders. And, very much in the beginning, if you think about it, the malware authors just wrote some piece of malware, and all of a sudden there was an antivirus system. And when they realized there are antivirus systems, they started to obfuscate some of the malicious payload, such as these signatures wouldn't pick up. So, as you can imagine, obfuscation, polymorphic, metamorphic malware has been there, mutating the payload. The defenders, security vendors, then started to do program analysis, trying to understand what's in there, how it's evolved. And the malware authors then went on to use encryption, hackers basically, to hide the malicious payload. Again, the response of the security industry was to create sandboxes and run the malware, dynamic analysis, and so on and so forth. We have evasive malware trying to evade sandboxes, then we had anti-sandbox technologies, all the way to targeted attacks that are very, closely looking, making checks, am I on the right system, before they really execute their malicious payload and show their intent, what they're after.
How have cyber criminals begun to weaponize AI?
So there are many ways that we see at the moment AI being used by the cyber criminals out there. On the one hand side, you can think of basically using AI to make existing attacks stronger. We call these AI-aided attacks. So we've seen last year a couple of examples at conferences like Black Hat or DEF CON, where people have shown how they create spam, better spam that is evading detection using some AI techniques, or how they are mining LinkedIn or other social media to find the right targets. Or we've seen examples where they used AI, reinforcement learning, or genetic algorithms to mutate an existing piece of malware to evade antivirus systems. So these are kind of things that we see exist out there. And even more, when we look at how AI exists today and is openly available to people, it's really, what we call a democratization of AI. It's very powerful, but also open source and available out there for everybody to use. Attackers can pick up on these AI technologies, study them, and use them to their advantage. And that's where we kind of see also a big risk that existing attacks can become AI powered, in terms of that AI is embedded directly in the malware and execute things automatically. So a couple of characteristics are going to change there if AI is being used by cyber criminals.
What is a typical carrier app, and could we all have infected apps?
In principle, yes. I think that would be possible, that some apps that we have on our computers may have already some AI embedded that is concealing the malicious intent. We haven't seen anything out there today, so we don't have any kind of real world example that we know of. But I wouldn't be surprised if something like this exists already, because ultimately these tools are available and attackers can use them. And they can combine these off-the-shelf AI with existing malware techniques to strengthen and harden their attacks.
You and your team described something called DeepLocker. What is DeepLocker and what makes it unique?
So DeepLocker is really a way to conceal malicious payload, malicious content in benign-looking carrier applications. So in other words, what's really unique about DeepLocker is that it's using AI to conceal the presence, and also using the same AI to identify the right target and when to trigger the malicious payload. Think of it in this way. So we talked about the AI, the malware evolution before. In all of these cases that we had in the past, there was always the key to unlock the encrypted payload. And there was also some checks. Am I on the right system? Somewhere in this malware. So if you have a malware analyst looking at this line by line, they can realize, okay, what are the type of instructions that this malware is looking for, or where does it get the key from? Does it have it embedded, or is it getting it over a command and control network? In all cases, there are ways to figure out how the malware is going to evolve. And this is, what they have done with Stuxnet. One could analyze Stuxnet eventually and figure out what its goal and techniques was. Now with DeepLocker, with AI-powered attacks, and what we show with DeepLocker is how an attacker can use a neural network, a deep neural network, which is an AI structure, to conceal this information and present different input to that neural network. And at the output, if the right input is being shown, then a key is being generated, which is unlocking the malicious payload. So there's no key, but there's a key maker in the malware. And this key maker is extremely hard to reverse engineer and to understand what it's doing or what it's after.
You and your team went through a demo with me on this right before we started the interview. Let's show what that looks like.
Yeah, so Tanya, what we've done here is that we created a video conferencing application, which looks like a real video conferencing application, just to have a benign looking application. And this can be distributed to everybody with a download. And for all the people that are downloading the application, it will be a real application, except for one person. And this person is going to be you today. So Jiyoung will now look at this website and will show how this conferencing application can be downloaded. We see the download website. Then he's clicking, he's opening it up. He's downloading the executable and he's running the application. Now you can see you have the video conferencing application coming up as normal. And for everybody out there, it will be the normal one. But look what happens if I take now the laptop where your face is on, where you're live in the interview, and I move it in front of the screen. You see, all of a sudden, the behavior of this video conferencing application has just changed. And the ransomware that was hidden in there, we just took the WannaCry ransomware, all of a sudden started executing and encrypt the laptop.
That's pretty scary stuff, Mark. I mean, I don't know. It's a little unnerving. So how can we encounter an AI-enabled cyber threat?
So we look at a number of things, especially when we talk about DeepLocker or how attackers in general can use AI and power their attacks. There are things we can do at the individual level. So you've seen before in the demo that we used your face and that the malware was triggering based on you being present on the other side of the camera. So reducing access to sensors like camera, like microphones, and other ways will definitely help on the individual level. But the real reason why we're doing our research and we are also going to conferences like Black Hat with our messages, we need to make the security industry and the security community aware that attackers can and are very likely using a lot of AI already today, and they need to think about next level of security tools and countermeasures. So specifically, we're looking in our team at a number of things as to how we can make the security teams more effective, more cost-effective, but also more responsive. So we've developed something what we call Watson for Cybersecurity and Curator for the Advisor, that our security industry, our security business unit IBM Security has brought to the market. But then at the same time, we also are researching on cyber deception. So think of deceptive elements that we can place all over the computer, the IT environment, to basically misdirect or poison the intelligence of a malware like DeepLocker, and eventually trigger or believe I'm not on the right system and make it go away or show its malicious intent in a safe space.
So if you're a high value target, a politician, an executive, a personality, you must need to be pretty careful. I mean, right? I mean, what can we do to safeguard ourselves?
Well, I think it's like I said, some of the access to sensors, but then also being up to date with the security tools, monitor the environment, having the right systems installed that are monitoring what applications are being run or how these applications behave. I mean, it's in many ways a big push and a wake-up call to the security industry to move off traditional systems such as rule-based systems that AI today can learn and can try to understand how it can evade, but move to new types of systems that are also using AI to be more, or let's say, less predictable in terms of the responses and what it's able to detect, but more agile. So it's about both having the right tools, but also sending out the message to the industry to counter such AI-powered attacks and study them in the first place. What's possible today?
So how real is the threat today? Is DeepLocker in the wild?
So definitely it's not in the wild because of us, because we have only done a proof of concept, a very simplistic version of what can be done, because our mission really is about studying what's the art of the possible. We're into countermeasures, obviously, into defenses. So we use this to demonstrate what can be done today. We can't say whether there's anything like that already out there, and in principle, in theory, it could be out for years, something similar or something even smarter that we can't really say. But as we've seen in the past with many very advanced and persistent threats out there, it typically takes years from the initial release to the point where someone is picking up on them and reports them. And that's why we need to have new defenses today that can pick up on some of these new threats. Otherwise, we won't find out about them.
Well, thank you so much for joining me to shed some light on this. And if somebody wants to find out more about DeepLocker or about your work, how can they do that?
Feel free to reach out to us. We have a website, our team, and we're here to help and answer questions.
Sounds great. And if you want to connect with me, you can. You can find me right here on ZDNet or Tech Republic, or maybe go to my website, tanyahall.net. I've got links to all my social channels. Thanks for watching.